So when the protests first erupted, the mayor of Olympia, Washington, was right there with support, even throwing her own city under the bus. Cheryl Selby said her predominantly white town was not as welcoming and nurturing to minorities. And the light switched on by Mr. Floyd's murder now shines glaringly on Olympia. But when that light focuses on your actual house, the tune changes. After woke vandals damaged her home, her predominantly white town was suddenly victimized by what she called domestic terrorism. The rioters had covered her front door and porch with spray-painted messages. "It's unfair," she whined. It's like the story we cited after this all kicked off. Former ESPN writer Chris Palmer deemed the violent masses as animals and called the cops on them as they neared his house. But that happened just after he urged them to burn it all down while retweeting a building in flames, low-income housing in Minneapolis, someplace far away. But then the fire got closer and Palmer felt the heat of his own wokeness. I'm not going to say I told you so, because if you're listening, you already know that. I'm just telling the truth. It is easy, very easy, to admire and even encourage destruction when you're far from it or well protected. Whether it's defending riots or defunding cops, the loudest voices don't fret about the consequences. If celebs didn't have private security, they would be better people. Because we know that if you defund the police, it's minority communities that will be hurt most. But if you're rich and powerful, it's not going to touch you until it does. Just ask the mayor of Olympia, who now sees terror in her front yard. Maybe she can call the Seattle cops. They've got free time. Jesse, now it's domestic terror. How convenient.
Yeah, well, I had Victor Davis Hanson on Water's World over the past weekend. He's very smart, near the IQ range of you, Greg. I'd say top 20, maybe even 10%. And he said, historically, when you have movements like this throughout the world, usually what puts a stop to them is when they start eating their own. And right now, you're kind of getting close to the circular firing squad situation. You know, they went after CNN headquarters. They even vandalized the AFL-CIO headquarters. Now they're going to the homes of Democrat politicians. If they start really targeting the media elite and the political elite, that's when they're going to shut this down. It's kind of like when the Me Too movement, everybody was all in. Then they went after Joe Biden. Now you don't believe all women anymore. That got shut down pretty quickly. The one thing I would tell these Democrats, if you don't want people vandalizing your house, build a wall. Very effective with this stuff.
Yeah. Emily, this is your part of your neck of the woods. Are all of these leaders in Washington just incredibly cowardly and callow and naive and silly? They're children.
Yes, they are, and unresponsive and delusional and ridiculous and worthless. Mayor Wheeler, for example, in Portland, he's such a joke to me. Remember when he let Portland's ICE building be occupied for 5 weeks? After which the human excrement and needles were so thick, they had to have a hazmat team come in to clean it. And he was saying during that time, oh, I'm not going to let the city get involved. But pretty sure it was the city's residents whose taxes paid for that cleanup. And these other mayors, Seattle Mayor Durkin, Olympia Mayor Selby, they are all the same. They're just performative allies. They're songbirds. And to me, they're in the same category as those Hollywood Hills activists, where they say these delusional sound bites from the safety of their snowflake homes. But when it really hits the fan, then they walk it back. And as always, like I keep saying, the biggest losers are those residents. And I will say, actually, the difference between these mayors and those Hollywood Hills activists is the fact that these mayors are having their salaries paid by the citizens that they keep letting down.
Yeah. Dana, I am just impressed that Emily has mentioned excrement twice in this show already. I don't know if you can beat that, but I would.
Well, I did notice that, and I was thinking about how you used to use a word. Greg used to like to use a word that started with the letter P that meant the same as excrement, and maybe you wouldn't have gotten in so much trouble with the producers had you used the thesaurus of the P word. That it means excrement.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
What I would say
so
on
you
this,
just beat Emily.
That the that the mob giveth and the mob taketh away. And now you have local leaders that are realizing that I absolutely believe that local government is the very toughest government. But and it didn't get that much attention, and probably didn't deserve to, but not too far here in the Jersey Shore in Point Pleasant Beach, there's a mayor named Paul Kenitra, and he had a situation that just trashed the beach one Saturday night. And his response that he gave on Facebook was so much different than these other mayors that we're talking about out in Washington State. There are some really good local elected leaders out there. We need people that want to be in local government. And if you're trying to find a role model in local government, do not look to Washington State. Look to somebody like a Paul Kenitra.
Yeah. All right, Juan, take us home.
Well, you know, my take on this is a little different than the rest of the gang, because to me it comes down to one point. Americans have the right to peaceful protest, to a peaceful assembly. Now, defacing somebody's house, that's not peaceful assembly. But the point is that everybody has a right to go out and protest, to air their grievances. They're protesting in front of the White House on a regular basis throughout American history. That's the right of Americans. It's in the First Amendment. For anybody who has a doubt, go check it out. And it goes down to the local level. You can protest. So I hope you're all for that, because that's what's going on. And I think by saying, oh, you're going to demonize the protesters because the mayor was supportive and then they did something wrong to their house, they were wrong, but the protest isn't wrong. And give me a moment here, because what is wrong is when you see, for example, these white supremacists who infiltrate a peaceful protest in Oakland and kill a security officer at a federal building. Or when you have the white supremacists, again, interrupt a protest in Albuquerque and kill a protester. That's what's going on. That's the pattern. Yeah. And we should call attention to it. But the media doesn't call as much attention to that as it deserves.
Yeah,